Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining this awesome talk. I've been so excited about this conversation about the happiness map, finding fulfillment in work and life by Dr. Emily Shupert and her co-author, Anthony M. Flynn. And it has been such an awesome experience for me to go through this book, and I want to share it with my people. And so thank you so much, Emily, for coming.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about the happiness map?
Yes. So basically this is where we want to start with you, with your audience, and kind of meet at the place at the pain point. And so we wanted, Anthony and I, both the co-authors, and I'll go into that in a second. We just kept seeing like the same things over and over, where people were feeling really lost in their pursuit of happiness. I work more on a higher socioeconomic group, really high functioning clients who are anxious and usually CEOs, CFOs, moms, teenagers, but just a lot of people who are striving. And whether it's a student who's trying to get an Ivy League school, or med school student, or a mom, or a CEO, CFO, once they got to their place that they wanted to be, they recognized that it was, one, really lonely at the top, and two, it was not what they wanted it to be. And Anthony comes from a profoundly impoverished background, and he decided, and works now with also with CEOs and CFOs in his company, but also helps. He works with those who are in profound poverty to have educational options through a nonprofit he started. And so he sees it on one side of the spectrum, and I see it on the other. So they're like, if I had this, then I'll be happy. And they're in a lower socioeconomic group where they really don't have a lot. And then mine are on the other side, or somewhere in between. And so we're saying, it doesn't really matter where you are, how much money you have, how old you are, race, gender, class. Like, it really is a question that we see so many people ask, like, when am I going to be happy? And we recognized, like a slide says, that happiness is so elusive. Like, if I want to be healthier, well, that's a really marked decision, like that we can see in how fast you can run, or weight, or just health, like overall, and fitness. And for happiness, it's just this kind of moving measuring stick that we never really reach. And so we try to help people see that they don't have a map to happiness. They don't understand what that looks like. And oftentimes that means they have to ask deeper questions. And then even say, like, hey, I need directions in this process. And that's kind of what we aim to do.
Well, I felt that as I've been going through the happiness map. I felt kind of a clarification of my own thoughts on what is happiness, what am I looking for, and you ask really deep thoughts, what I would call think times, and
Yeah.
you have people take time to think about their lives and
Mm.
what have we been raised to expect
Yeah.
happiness is, who are we living for, are we kind of living someone else's script, are we living a script that we believe is designed for us? Those
Mm-hmm.
questions are so good, and they're awesome for all of us to pause from.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the stay-at-home mom to the CEO and everywhere in between, or even if you're both, the process of deciding what our pursuit is in life is huge. And I really feel like it's happiness, but you guys go deeper.
Yeah. It's we use happiness because we thought of titles, and we're like, I don't think that those are allowed. That those don't really they don't get the like 5-second look at the Barnes and Noble and say, I want to read that. It really is so much more than happiness. Happiness is what everyone says they want, but they really want so much more. And so, yes, we used the whole concept of the happiness map, but really through this process, it's healing from your past, having clarity in your present, and really seeing purpose and long-standing joy in your future as well.
That's awesome. So healing from your past, finding purpose in your present, and then looking forward to joy in the future.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
love
and purpose there too, just being able to see, like, where are we going? So, yeah. So this is, I'm showing you a little picture. This is Anthony and me. Yeah, this is a little bit about Anthony. This is myself. Yeah,
I
and just,
love, can we pause on that for a second?
yeah,
I don't want to
sure.
get it all. I don't want to make it too long. But I love the way you guys set this up. So do you want to talk about your authorship, your co-authorship? I think it is
Sure.
just fascinating, and
Yeah.
adds a huge depth and takes a lot of expectations off the table of what could make us happy just by your stories alone, just who you
Yeah.
are coming together and writing this book.
Yeah. Yeah, Anthony, as he says, I quote him, he says, I come from the hood. And so he really does. He comes from profound poverty in Memphis, Tennessee. And through education and opportunities, he was able to really break out of the cycle of poverty. And I love his heart because he's like, I didn't go through this just so that I could get out of it. I did it for greater purpose. And so that's what he's committed his life to. And so he works in a gifted foundation, and they actually help students get scholarships, some full ride scholarships, help them coding, and also help them with coaching, knowing, okay, maybe you didn't have a dad who didn't teach them how to look someone in the eye in an interview and how to present yourself. So a lot of the skills that aren't, it's not just the GPA, but it's a holistic approach. And then working with people who are really there, CEOs and key executives, and helping them see, yeah, you've gotten to where you want to be. Some of y'all got out of the hood like I did, but there's still this deep yearning inside of you. And it doesn't matter how many cars you have. It doesn't matter how many jets you have. It really is something deeper that's going on, and helping them have that.
And
And
when I was reading his part, sorry to interject,
yes, yeah,
it surprised me when he talked about his success and that being a negative at
yeah,
the beginning. He was able to get the cars, the money, everything, and then he realized, oh, this isn't empty. No, this is not fulfilling.
yes, yeah. And it's interesting because a lot of people can say, well, we wanted to use our stories, and we felt like even if someone couldn't connect 100% with me or 100% with him, somewhere along both of our narratives, they would find their story in ours, or something very similar, And so with his story, yeah, he got to the top, and he was like, this isn't what I want. Which I thought was really interesting, and I thought, and really insightful, because the younger version of him probably would have been like, hey, you have food on the table and you have a nice house and car. And so I think from him being able to see, I've been on both ends of the spectrum, like both ends. His friends that are incarcerated, friends that were killed from gangs and violence, and being able to say, I lived it, and I lived through both sides. And I think that there's something, I think we so easily kind of write it off, and we're like, well, that's not relevant. And it's like, this man has lived in extremes, and he can speak from the side and say, either way,
Yeah,
it's not from here.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, now about you. Where did you come from?
Yeah. And so we actually met. It's really cool. I have been wanting to write a book for about a year, and I have a full-time practice and directing my private practice, and with leading other counselors, mentoring, coaching them and stuff. And so it's like, I don't really have the bandwidth, nor do I know what to do. And so it was really cool. I was just praying about it, thinking about it. And he and I were in a business consulting group for about 5 years. And he came up and he was like, I want to mentor you. I want to help you. I want to write a book. I want to help you write your first book. And so I love the heart of that, the heart of partnership and stuff in this process, and how we, in this whole journey, I think, learn to live out some of the stuff that we were even writing too, of like, where do we want to be, individually and as a team. So I'm a counselor. Also I speak from schools, from the schoolroom to the boardroom. I love being able to help and speak into purpose, specifically in regards to anxiety. I really love helping people combat anxiety, understand what anxiety is and what it isn't, and actually use that to help them further where they want to be. Fear is not, it's not a 4-letter word necessarily. It's something that they can really use to help them get to the next level. And so that's my goal of using my background understanding of counseling and my clinical knowledge to really normalize what a lot of people go through in life,
Yeah.
and to help them use their strengths, use their God-given strengths, to be able to combat whatever they're facing.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
if you're in Atlanta and you're feeling somewhat anxious, then they can call Simplify Life. Is that
Yeah, yeah. And if it's our goal is because of speaking and counseling, I don't have a ton of flexibility, but my whole goal is to be able to offer resources to people. So if they call in, we will walk them through, whether if it's not with me, it is with someone else, and we'll make sure that they that the conversation continues until they have that first session and feel like it's a fit. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you for going through that. That's an awesome beginning. Okay.
Think I just, yeah. So sorry, here's the next one. Go through. Yeah, that just explains a little bit more about what we've done, and goal of being able to help your listeners and the people who are on this listening to this live, and also those who are on Think Time, to be able to find happiness in their journey today. I just think there's a lot of crossover in that too.
A lot of crossover between our messages, and I love it.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so basically really we want for people to discover what really matters, because like what really matters to you is what's different for me, right? And so at times of life, the core is probably the same, but really helping people understand what it is and what exactly where they are in the journey. So it's being able to find out, just like when you're lost. I'm lost all the time, like all the time in Atlanta. I grew up here and I should know, but I don't. And so sometimes outside of ways. And so many times it's like finding out where you are, that like you are here on a map. Because not only is elusive, but it's also really confusing if we don't know where we are in this journey. And sometimes people don't want to do that because that means they have to like look at where they are. They have to see, wow, I'm not where I want to be. And so that can be a little bit hard, but we've given some questions. Our book is kind of a book and a workbook, intentionally so that they can read something and be encouraged and hopefully inspired by it, but then be able to use some practical application and say, okay, what does this look like in my life? Like right now, pen and paper. And so a lot of times it means being able to step back and say like, okay, where am I in this journey? And there might be segments of your life where you're really happy and there might be others where you're not, and being able to differentiate that, and be able to say, you know, some parts of my life is really thriving and other parts are not. And so where am I in this journey? And where am I on these different segments as well? And that's kind of one of the things we talk through.
So do you give people kind of permission to just acknowledge, like, I can be happy over here and not happy over here, and it doesn't have to be an all or nothing?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think sometimes, and especially those who struggle with depression, it can be all consuming and it can kind of be this like gray film that they see. Like I have glasses. I'm sorry, the glare is kind of bad, but yeah, it's kind of like this gray film over life, and it can be something that it just becomes universal. And so that's where we also want to step back. If people are struggling with depression, we don't want to be insensitive to what they're going through and say like, hey, just be happy. No, it's saying like, what you're going through is intense, but let's see what part of it actually is okay. If there are some, you know, instead of just my life stinks. Well, work might be hard, but you have a really supporting spouse, or you've got a great community, or you might have a great community, but you're killing in the marketplace, and being able to kind of see some of those things and differentiate too.
Love that. Love that.
So, yeah, I thought that this was pretty interesting. I loved researching the different parts of, oops, let me go back. So yeah, perfect. The different parts about happiness. And we would think, okay, we are the most, you know, what are we, the wealthiest, you know, most powerful countries in oh, good. Uh, and so it's really interesting to understand that, why that is. And it's interesting. One of the things we looked at was the American dream, and we call it in the book the American myth. A lot of times people think, okay, it's the white picket fence, and when I have that, then I'll be happy. And so many people come to America thinking that, and I think that that is something that's really hard because it's expectations
Yeah.
and reality, and they're not all connected. And so I think that that's one of the factors and why we are not at the highest level. We might be the most powerful, we might be the wealthiest, but that even on a national level does not equate happiness. So it certainly would not personally.
Mhm.
Let's look at different parts of it to understand that age does impact it, and seeing that people of certain ages usually generally go through a slump, and it's kind of like a U shape, which is interesting, right?
Oh, that was really interesting. I thought, I wonder if people about our age just think, oh no, life only gets worse because it has that downward curve
Yeah,
for a while where you're happy, happy, happy when you're younger, and then it goes downward. But then it's neat to know that there's this upward swing at
yeah,
about 45 or 50, right? Somewhere
yeah,
in
yeah,
maybe 49 or 50. It looks like it starts
uh,
coming up again. And I
yeah,
thought it was pretty fascinating.
yeah.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And I think it's helpful even for expectation. It doesn't mean that everyone's going to go in that dip, but I think sometimes of recognizing, okay, kids are in high school or they're going off to college, or, people sometimes we saw for the research in business is like I'm at mid management and I wanted to be at this level. And just to be able to see this book is our hope is so that you're not a statistic, so that you don't have to go that low, and you can actually prepare in advance and say, you know what, I might dip a little bit, but what can I do on the other side? Like when my kids go up to college, how can we find purpose so that we go on date nights or have healthy community now, so that when our kids go off to college, like we know each other and we love each other and we're excited, and we have lives outside of our kids, or we have lives outside of work if they're moving towards the later years of work and going towards retirement. So yeah, it's all about prevention.
You have to be so purposeful to get the
Yeah.
time, keep the relationship through the intensity of raising children. I mean, we're living that. You have to be intentional and put a
Yeah.
significant financial and time investment in that to
Mhm.
maintain it. So
Mhm.
I feel that that's kind of where we live right now. Just um, hoping, when the kids leave, that there's still a relationship there. The goal is to move together. Because it's hard. It's a really hard season of intensity and lots of emotions on every one of the people in our home. Everyone has emotions. Uh,
Yes.
so it's a lot to make it through.
Yeah.
Um, do you mind if I interject and just say, if you have a question, I'm going to have this Zoom group chat here. We're going to save the questions for the end, but you guys are all welcome to type your questions as we go along into the group chat. I'm going to hide it for a while, but then I will, after the presentation, we'll go ahead and answer those. Okay?
With that too, I think in our book we tried to make something where there are small steps. So we did even small steps for introverts and extroverts. The therapist in me is I'm a social introvert, and I don't know what are you? Are you a introvert, extrovert? Are
Confused.
you?
I recharge by myself. I
Yeah,
think I appear to be an extrovert, but I really need alone time to
yeah.
recharge. Yeah.
We're the same. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're not the same, but yeah, it's similar. And so with that, it's some things that you can do. So I went through different activities that you can do on an introvert and extrovert. Just small things. I think a lot of times people are like, well, when this happens, and that's one of the things we talked about. It's like, when this happens, then I'll be happy. When this happens, then I'll be happy. And it's like, well, what are one or two things you can do today? And it can be something small like I have like work for, I don't have kiddos, but I have work right now and it's pretty bam, 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 bam. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to take a 5-minute break and I'm going to go get the mail and I'm going to walk outside. And
Yeah.
like, I know that that sounds so weird, but it's like something that's like, oh, this is a happy, like, this is just a happy, um, or I'm going to, get a mocha before I, in between sessions or something, like small things, and really being able to savor those things help us to be able to step back and celebrate in the moment, in the mess, in the midst of everything, and be able to see like, this is something small. It is intentional. It's small. But I'm being able to like incorporate things that bring us joy and allow you to recharge even in the midst of
Yes.
the, you know?
Yes. I selected my ideal on the introvert part, and I got excited. I was like,
I
oh,
love, I love it. I love it. So what does it happiness look like? We created a 4x4 happiness model, and we used it from Gallup and a lot of other just happiness models and happiness assessments. And we found out that like this whole book we wanted to create is, yes, it comes from Anthony's My Journey, but also we really want to be able to say, this is your map. Like if you plug this in, you accelerate. We found a lot of times happiness books were really kind of fluff, for a lack of a better word. Where they were very academic. And so it's like, well, now you sound impressive at a cocktail party, or, at at a time gathering at the water cooler, but like how, we really wanted to make it practical. And so we found from our research and for our own studies of understanding what does this look like. And so we made it into 4 different key areas there, and being able to see like, these are the 4 different areas and these are the 4 steps. So being able to find out where your destination is, what your location is, realizing what you need to do, and then accelerate through it in the process.
I think I just messed up our
All good.
let me just pull that back up. That's gonna take just a second. Okay, so you can keep talking about that point while I pull up the presentation. Are you there?
Awesome. Okay.
Okay, yeah, I think you can keep talking about it. I'm gonna pull the
So
sorry about that, guys. I pushed the wrong button. I'm trying to make it easier.
Yeah, go for it. So the money part, so that was one that, let me just see, I think so the money, section too, and that's one that we started out with because a lot of times finances are something in which a lot of times people don't like, they base a lot of their happiness off of. And it's like, okay, if I win the lottery, right, like in Georgia we'll have, and I don't know if every state has a lottery now, but in Georgia I'll be like, if I win the lottery, I'm going to do this, and so we really wanted to understand what finances are. We talked about receiving money only makes us happy to a certain point. So we must obtain it and use it wisely. There is a certain threshold where actually those who have a certain amount of money, it does make them happier, but it's not really, it covers the bills. It covers expenses, it makes that easier for them. But it doesn't necessarily make them fully happy. Oh, awesome.
See if we can catch up. There we go. Finances. Okay.
Sweet. Okay. So yeah. And so money is a tool to be used well, but not an end to itself. Just so they can see, okay, now I have this money, now what? And really talking through like, what is the purpose of money? Why do you want money? And I love how Dave Ramsey says we live like no one else so we can live and give like no one else. So if you want to make money, that's great. But like, why and what are you going to do with it? And it's okay if you get vacation houses. It's okay if you do whatever. Like there's something wrong in it, but it's really, what is that? What are you wanting the purpose to be in your money? And not making what it's not. Yeah.
I've just heard so much language around I would if I could afford it. There's a lot of can do around money.
Mm-hmm.
And money is so much of, it is so much of a choice factor and a priorities factor often.
Absolutely.
In our world. Now, there are places where you really don't have money. But there are ways, I don't know, it's a very interesting thing to me because money and time are so intertwined in how you use them.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking and being thoughtful, like all of these things are very intentional activities and they really show priorities in the way we allocate them. And I have, I don't know, that's just kind of an insert. I don't know if it's helpful or not, but it's really one of those things that I guess it reveals the heart, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it's something that, it's something that has so much meaning attached to it that I can't actually provide, and I think that, it's we talked through even in the book, like the Industrial Revolution, like all the things that money really did get people into a place where they could provide and they could create wealth and it's wonderful things, but it became something that it couldn't provide also, you know.
Yes. Yes.
So next, I think if you can do the next one.
Oh, I need to share your.
All good.
Okay.
Okay, so family. We talked through, and that family's hard too. And Anthony's story, he shared a lot of that as well. Of just, I came from a suburban family, intact family. He came from a pretty broken home, and he was able to say through that, like, you know, this is what family can look like. Many times he also focused on, even if you don't have this pristine story, you can find purpose in the pain and being able to be like, for him, he's like, I'm the father that I wish I had, like I am present. I mean, he is leading boardrooms and then like skipping out and going to see his kids football game and then getting back in. And I'm like, man, it's amazing. But he's like, I'm going to be to my kid what I didn't have, and so I think that's really powerful. And then the money career success can't replace the pains that need to heal from destructive relationships. So a lot of it we talk about your family from the past, so like healing from wounds of your parents or a caretaker or siblings, or healing from some of those messages that you got in childhood. We're not blaming it on parents by any means, but helping to explain kind of how you see yourself, how you see the world, how you see your family now. And if you focus on your family, the fulfillment you experience there will be dramatically affected by the fulfillment you also enjoy at work too. So being able to see that both are important.
Yes, that's so good. See, I said it was deep.
I know.
I mean, we are so driven by the really early childhood pains. We
Yeah.
don't ever pause to think through those. And you really share in your story, and Anthony shares in his story some of those that were really driving you, and you're able to pause and gain self awareness.
Yeah.
And you even encourage us to have like a self awareness scale as we go through it.
Yes.
And I know Ian Morgan Cron, said, I think self awareness is one of the highest predictors of success. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. I think I don't know the exact quote, but I've heard it. Yes. Yeah.
Something to that effect, if I remember correctly, which is
That's probably right on.
debatable. But no, I'm pretty sure that it was one of the highest predictors of success is being self-aware. And this book, I feel like, does so much because it is like a workbook style. You have information, and then you have, okay, now your turn, and go deep. It's such, I don't know, I feel like it's like a self-awareness boost. Somehow. It's awesome.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Yeah. And really talking through in the family, we talk through, and we'll go through it even more, but really go through their story and like the pain, and I say for Anthony, like his process is helping out people that are in poverty. Part of one of his jobs, he does like, runs 3 different companies. It's amazing. And then for mine is, I was a kid who had major anxiety, went through some traumas, and, you know, we decided I want to be able to help other people, through that. And so really through family, I think a lot of times, especially moms and dads, when they're raising kids, they're like, oh gosh, what if I mess up? What if I whatever? And it's like, hey, you're not going to crush your kids' anxiety in this. I talked even about an accident that I had and how my parents weren't able to offer what I needed as a kid because they didn't know what they didn't know. And someone was like, oh gosh, are your parents upset? And I was like, I dedicated it to them. Like my mom helped edit it. No, it's a whole learning process to be able to say like, hey, sometimes we make mistakes, as parents, they make mistakes. My gosh, I'm like, one of my savings accounts is probably going to be a therapy fund one day, but being able to say, that as a family, that even if there were wounds or unintentional wounds, even that there could be healing that can happen. And so I think that that's really hopefully life-giving and inspiring to parents who are looking at like, oh gosh, is that going to mess up my kid? And it's like, we are all in process, and the whole happiness process is not blaming it on parents. It's learning from the wounds, learning from the good, the bad, the ugly, and then being able to really implement that in their own life and their family in the future.
And I really believe most parents do the best they can.
Totally.
Not all, most of all parents do the
Yeah.
best they can. And I love the way you said that. They didn't know what they didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so healing, and it's a journey together of like, oh my gosh, thank you, um, for maybe you didn't catch that, but you took care of all these other areas. And it's beautiful and wonderful. And I wouldn't be where I am without them. So yeah, it's a great process. Okay, let me see. We'll go to community. This one is also incredibly important, because I think we learn and grow in community. We hurt in community. We get hurt in community, and we heal in community too. And so, if you look at relationships to define, we really talked about who you are and give purpose in your life. We want them to look around and say like, okay, who are those 5 people in your sphere, like closest to you? I think they said like, show me your closest friend, I'll show you your future. Really saying that community is so key. Relationships only provide opportunities to reveal who you are, and they don't magically solve everything. And so we talked through community, friends, spouses, relationships. Like, they can't heal. And a lot of people who are single think, okay, when I have this, then I'll be happy. Or, people in marriage are like, hey, once I have kids, then I'll be happy. And it's this whole process of, we can't put that emotional size freight onto somebody else, but we can definitely benefit from those other people. But we can only do so when we've done our own work and are working on our own journey, instead of expecting that from someone else. Because relationships, I said, accentuate what's already present in our lives, in the lives of both people. Relationships can be a mirror, and a good in many ways, I think, if we're willing to look.
They are. And if we can keep our defenses low and
Yeah.
explore when you have those discouragements and resentfulnesses and when expectations aren't met, if the defenses can stay low, then we can learn from them. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's awesome. So, when you talk about the community, I haven't gotten to this part yet.
Yeah.
Does it help in the research? Like, do friendships help make you happier? And how does that part play in?
Yeah, great question. Relationships really do help us heal. I say, when people are going through trauma or grief, time heals, but it's also what we do in our time. And community is healthy. Community is the backbone. And with that, I think it's having what I mentioned, is having community where it's not just your close friends, but also if you have board of directors. I did this since I was in my early 20s, is having a personal board of directors. Companies have that, institutions have that, but many times we don't, as individuals, have that. And so when they're board of directors, the defenses do go low, because you said, I want feedback. Like, I am available to feed. I want to hear, I want to receive what it's like on the other side of me. And many times that can be a spouse. But additionally, it's people that have been there, done that, got the t-shirt. It's people that are, for you, dripping in grace, and as healthy as possible. And so having the board of directors really helps in that community, so that when have a situation and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that, they're like, yeah, I've been there too. Why don't we work together in this, so you don't continue down that rabbit hole? Like, okay, you made a decision on this, on purchasing this, or not doing this job, or whatever that is. Let's just step back, and we'll walk with you together in this. It's interesting, for a lot of times, for even mental illness, and I know that's a more extreme version, but many times, isolation is one of the key factors. And so, I think being able to come in community, it's and not the community where it's like I'm blasting on Instagram, and I'm having this like vulnerability thing, but I'm really not being intentional and inviting other people into my space, where they also are walking with me in it, and it's a conversation. I'm talking about really bringing people into that, and having community that walks with you through. It's a dialogue. It's an ongoing dialogue.
I love that. It's awesome.
Yeah. It's good stuff. It's hard. So this is why I think understanding the happiness process. Yeah.
I feel like it's hard these days. This is what I'm noticing. We have what I would consider a good community in our life. But I feel like in general, and we also aren't very busy, like we purpose not to be very busy. But I feel like in general, busyness it just kind of takes out the
Mm.
things that you're talking about, like time with family and time with community. And then, when you're busy, your finances fly out the window. These things almost kind of just are hard to grab. So,
Mhm.
this is just I don't know, in community specifically, because relationships take time. They
It,
really,
they, they take time and it's so hard. I mean, how old is, I know you've got kids. I don't know the oldest.
yeah, almost 9.
Almost 9. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
So I think community, it's so interesting how the shift is from like early childhood to early adolescence and beyond. And it's interesting because I think it's like everyone gets invited to the birthday parties, everyone, or everyone goes to the swim party or whatever that is. And then progressively it becomes smaller and smaller. And I think that can be very hurtful for people. But it can also, I think as adults, it's a reality, it's not, sometimes people are like, well, that means that I'm not invited to this, or that these people aren't a part of this group. And I think if we're looking at this, um, we're not we're not able to invite as many people into that space anymore, and that's okay, because if we're going to be purposeful in our lives, we have to be purposeful with our times and see we only have so much bandwidth. And so being able to, and I talked about this some in the book too, and I explain this to also clients and people when I'm consulting them. They're like, wow, that sounds harsh. And it's like, actually, it's really purposeful. Being really clear with who's in your inner circle, and not telling people that are outside of it, they're not in their inner circle. But like I years ago was I was sitting in a lecture and not really paying attention. And I was like, okay, here's my core. And I had a 1, 2, and 3. And I was like, my core team, my number ones, or A team, like who are these people? And I wrote down about 6 to 8 people. And I was like, these are people that they have walked with me for years. And some have been from childhood, graduate school, wherever. It's like, these will be bridesmaids. These will be like lifelong friends. These are people who are on that board too, Second tier is, these are people that will, hang out, will go to dinner. These are colleagues. These are important people for sure, but they're just not, if I fell off face of the earth, that number one group, like they would know exactly where I was emotionally, relationally, spiritually, all of those things. And then 3 is the larger group. And so I recognized I was getting really, really tired talking about time. I was really, really tired and exhausted. And those number ones, the most life-giving people, I'd actually not spend as much time with.
okay.
And because I was saying yes to the 3s, I was saying yes to the people that were the loudest, that were the neediest, and that were the most demanding. And they're lovely people, but they were, it was out, I was responding out of need and impulse. And I'm a 2 on the Enneagram, a 2-3. But if anyone speaks Enneagram,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, it's like it's, oh, I can help you, And so I realized that one group, I had not seen them, some for like 4 or 5 months. And it's like, no. And so I did a big change in this process. And that's why I help clients with, and even speak in the book. And it's, my circle's smaller, but my life is so much fuller. And there's just some people where there's freedom of like, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. I'm like, yeah, it's so good to see you, and just being present there. And but then knowing that my interactions are not going to be as much, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And I'm at a healthier place, and I actually feel like my time is mine now. And I'm saying yes to the best for me, and being able to actually not be as rushed, because sometimes I say no even if I don't have something to do, because I just need to be able to have some breathing room.
Absolutely. That's such a great practical way to free
Yeah.
up time for what matters most. Good job. I love that
Yeah.
tip.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And it's so practical. And I think all of us can do that. All of us can say yes to the wrong things if we don't, take time to evaluate, is this the right direction for my time? And that's awesome.
Absolutely. Well, and but time is the currency we never get enough of. And you know that. I mean, that's what you guys do so well. And I think a lot of times we don't step back and say, what is it really, what's really going to make me happy? What people? And I think if we look back and say, who are the people you walked away and you were like, that felt good. Like that was just good. Like in all areas. Like I just feel so refreshed. Like those are those people that's like, that is what community is, you know?
I'm doing that exercise as soon as it's done.
I love it. I love it.
It's horrifying. It's exactly, where are we? I
I
love
know. I know.
it.
Um, yeah. And the physical is also, we see so many times when people are busy and when they're climbing the corporate ladder or they are doing carpool for everyone in their neighborhood, it's just physical can be really hard. And so we talked through the physical aspects of, this is our health is, I mean, your health is something that we take for granted. So many times we have to take
Mhm.
control over. And so, and really talking through how the physical impacts the mental.
Yeah.
30 minutes of cardiovascular activity 3 times a week actually is similar to taking serotonin, which is like anti-anxiety or sorry, it's same as increases your serotonin. It's just similar to anti-anxiety medication. So it's so simple, but many times it's just easier to you know, not do it and stay longer at work or go through the drive-through. And really talking through something that's important is being able to really physically take care of your body, and also physically knowing where you are in your life too. Like physically, like who are you positioning yourself with? Where are you in this process? And then also the people that you're surrounding yourself with. Like, are you physically I work a lot of times with singles, and it's like physically, where are you placing yourself? Are you placing yourself in relationships like that aren't satisfying to you? Are you physically, only going to certain places to meet people that the person you're looking for is not looking for you there, and so physically being able to make sure that people are in environments that really help them get to the place that they want to be.
So physical is health, and then think about where you are physically based on how you're spending your time and where.
Yeah, it's geographic and also uh yeah, physiologically too. We wanted to kind of play on both sides of that.
Cool. Very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So yeah, and really focusing on like your own key to your own happiness, and really being able to say happiness is an inside job. So I think we live in a community, in an environment, a society where we're sometimes quick to blame and say like, he did this or she did this or you make me feel or whatever. And it's like, no, happiness is a byproduct of you aligning your coordinates with your purpose, and really being able to say like, that's a work that you can do because you're worth fighting for, in this process. Um, we also really, I didn't focus as much on this, but just for a minute, we had the destination, location, realization, and acceleration in that process. And so finding out where they are, where they want to go, where they are now, what needs to change so that they can close the gap, and then how they can best move forward consistently. And so we take those 4 areas in each chapter so they can ask themselves those questions and make small steps. I know we're talking about this is like a deep dive, but we also want to make small, maintainable steps to go forward. It's not like, okay, here we go. Now what?
Mhm. I love that. I was doing one of your exercises, and you were asking, where are you now? Where you
Mm-hmm.
want to be in 1 to 2 years, right? And then where
Yeah.
you want to be 6+ years from now. And it's
Yeah.
so helpful to think of the immediate right now. What can I do? What's practical? And it just they're different answers. They're very different answers. Where do I want to be today?
Yeah.
Where do I want to be in a year or two? Where do I want to be in 6 years? And those are different answers, and they open up, just it almost immediately opens up the sense of purpose to ask that question
Mhm. Yeah.
of, where am I? Where do I want to be? And
Yeah.
then kind of giving the different time frames and the timelines with that question immediately just unlocks this awareness. It's beautiful.
Well, I think it makes like I was working with one uh, a mom, and her husband's just like really he because of his job is pretty demanding, and he's unable to parent some of the times at home during the dinner times, and she's saying how she's having a hard time really um, getting all these things done for her daughter who's small, and then she gets really upset and she'll yell at her daughter, and I'm like, well, what do you want for your life in 5 years? What do you want your relationship with your daughter to look like? And she was realizing, I just want her to be happy and healthy and to have a strong sense of self. And I was like, so I guess it doesn't really matter if she learns Chinese at 6, or if she knows. And I mean, that not to be demeaning, but it's like in the small process, it's like, this matters more than anything. And it's like, okay, but where are we going with this? Like, why are you even, like, what's even the purpose of your parenting? And is that what you want? Because if it is, okay. Um, but if it's not, and she was like, yeah, I don't like this. This doesn't bring me joy, and this didn't bring her joy. So let's get this done. And my son isn't going to do it either.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it
Yeah.
just gives immediate clarity. I love that. The questions that you ask are so insightful and so thoughtful. And I don't even feel like this awesome, overview is covering it. Of course it shouldn't. It's an overview. But I don't know. I'm really, really, really excited about the book. I really appreciate you coming and sharing about it.
Yeah.
And so tell me about, I think, how can you help us?
So that's, sorry, went a little, so, we can help by first, we have a couple freebies. And so if they go on to www.thehappinessmapbook.com, you can get an assessment and you can see how happy you are. I am, very results oriented, as I'm sure you are too, and, we're talking about time and how we don't have a ton of it. And we want to be purposeful. So, we are giving money back guarantee. So if you go through everything in this book and you are not happy, or your score has not changed from before you took the book, we will give you your money back, no questions asked. Yeah, we've done the research. We know what works, and so that's part of it. Just to get that quiz to kind of answer the where am I now, and then also the first chapter is free as well, so they can read through it. I always like to kind of get through that and see, like, what do I like in this, and yeah, and so that's a big part of it, for us. And we are also investing part of the funds into nonprofits, that we're passionate about as well. So just know that every book.
I feel like I lost you. Are you there? Can you hear me okay? Okay, well, we'll take this time for just a minute. I don't know if you guys can hear Emily or not. I cannot.
Oh, hey.
There you are. Okay, great. So you guys go ahead and send any questions you have. We have about 6 more minutes for any questions that you have for Emily. Oh, good. Alicia, you could, okay. Alicia says she can hear us both fine. So good. I just couldn't hear you for a second. It must have been me. Good. So what did you say? Can you hear me?
Yeah, what did I say? Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Alicia says she could hear us the whole time. So that's great. I think it was my internet connection.
Oh, gotcha.
So you told them to go to thehappinessmapbook.com. They
Yep.
can take a pre-test and a post-test, and the Enneagram 3 is coming out where you want results. You're going to measure this and
Yes.
make sure that they are getting absolute results from this. I have started this process, and I can see why you're making the money back guarantee, because there's no way that you can go through this process without getting amazing results. It's so good, and it's so easy to read too. It's like pleasant to read, and then deep dive in a really purposeful, clear manner that you can act on immediately. And then I don't know, I'm so excited about what you guys are doing. So please give a high five to Anthony next time you see him from me.
I will, absolutely.
I think it's awesome. Does anybody have any questions before we shut down? Or Emily, do you have any thoughts that you want to add?
No, honestly, no. My whole goal is for this, like you mentioned, it's actually, oh, you touched on it. So yeah, we actually, my whole goal was to make this kind of preventative to help people who might not go to counseling,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to receive that resource. And so we actually if anyone knows counseling, a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy,
Mhm.
and doing this, which is the most proven and researched way of being able to help with anxiety and really helps well as depression too. So I found like small groups will do this, couples will do this, and it's really helpful if there's even any low line, just dissatisfaction, sadness, or fear
Mhm.
without ever having to darken the door. Now, I'm a big fan of therapists or two,
Right.
but I think it's something that makes it a little bit more palatable, and helps, create conversation that people might not want to do with a stranger. You know.
I love it. I love it. I think we're both in the counseling world, and
Yeah,
we both appreciate counseling, but realize that there's a certain group of people that's not getting reached through counseling. So the book reaches out beyond that
absolutely.
realm, and it's a different price point and a different,
Yeah.
relational level. So, Alicia says you touched on overcoming destructive messages from childhood and parenting. For someone really struggling to set aside those deep ingrained messages, where do you recommend starting?
Hmm. I would go through the family section of the book. I think that I really the whole goal is for it to be kind of definitely a book, but also workbook, and for them to tear it up. And I would give it time if that's kind of where you are, and thinking through what messages did I have, and just giving yourself time to do that. I know that as parenting, it's really hard, but being able to maybe give like, you know, 20-30 minutes and just knowing that, and when it comes up, just being curious and being really and just caring towards that part of you. Sometimes e- especially even in parenting, it hits and you're like, oh my gosh, if you're something happened to you or if you were impacted by something at the same age of your child,
Mhm.
it can and it can bring back memories or even pain points that you haven't felt for a while because you haven't seen that, and then you see it in your child and you're like, I don't know that there's such a disconnect. I would never even think of that for this child. And so if that's happening, it's also helpful to, if it's deeper, be able to talk to a therapist about it. But in the initial is just really being mindful of it, and being really kind and caring towards that part of you that might still be triggered or wounded, and just like you would care for a child, to be able to care for that part of you, and be able to give it love, acceptance, and curiosity instead of shame, and labeling and condemnation of you or even other people around you.
Mhm. I love that. So just, when it's hard to set that aside, just really being caring toward that part of yourself, curious to allow yourself to go through that with yourself,
Yeah.
and be deep in the area. And then
Yeah.
specifically maybe start with the family section of the book.
Yeah. 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 And it's sometimes even, and this is something more of a counseling, but even writing to that younger version of you and being able to be a caretaker for that version and saying, like, I'm so sorry you've gone through this, but um, you'd be so proud of the person I've become. And I just want you to know that
Mhm.
you are loved and that you're enough and that you're worthy, and what's happening around you is not your fault. Sometimes things like that can be really healing, just just a personal level that you can do with yourself.
Mm, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, guys? I think we're good. Okay, Emily, thank you so much for coming. Again, it's thehappinessmapbook.com, and you can have a free assessment or read the free chapter right
Yeah.
there. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye.
All right, bye.